Well, I think probably from my time as Chancellor, the two things that I'll most be remembered for is giving the economy a soft landing after inheriting, a massive crisis, actually not really caused by the mini budget, but by having to pay down our COVID debt and the energy shock. And, we had inflation at 11% and getting it down to 2% and getting the economy growing in some challenging circumstances. And then probably I would add to that increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, which is a global geostrategic necessity. But I often, when I think about that question and I think about the challenge of long-term change versus short-term change, I actually normally point to an example of something that happened when I was Health Secretary. So my focus when I was Health Secretary was patient safety, reducing the number of avoidable deaths, of which we have about 13,500 every year in the NHS. And I think it's fair to say I was not a popular Health Secretary. I mean, I had the junior doctors on strike for nearly a year when I was trying to get more doctors working at weekends. And after I'd stepped down as Health Secretary, someone showed me the figures on baby deaths, because I'd had a particular focus on maternity safety, and the number of baby deaths actually fell, not just as a result of my efforts, but lots of people's efforts, by 15% over that period, which amounts to 2 fewer babies dying every single day. And no one will ever know that about what was a pretty challenging time as Health Secretary. But I will be proud of that until the day I die. And, Sachin, you and I were talking about Monday meetings. I had a meeting on patient safety every single Monday for pretty much my entire time as Health Secretary. And it did work. And so that's what I would say. You can make really profound long-term changes. And I would really say to any minister today, focus on that, because one day it's all going to be gone. And what you're going to think about is, what did I do that stood the test of time? And you don't expect to get much public praise for it. Of course, we're all human beings. We love to be lauded to the rooftops, but that's not the way British politics work. The press are set up to scrutinise politicians, and ultimately it generally concludes that we're all failures. But you can look back and you can see lots and lots of examples of politicians who made decisions that stood the test of time. John Gummer, when he was Environment Secretary, bent the rules to give permission for the London Eye to be built in time for the millennium. And he knew it would never get through if he made it a permanent change. So they were given a temporary license to put up the London Eye. But he knew once it was up, it would be permanent. And that is something you can be incredibly proud of. That is a London landmark that John Gummer created. So it's possible to do amazing things and things that you really feel proud of. But you just have to know what those changes are that you're trying to do, and make sure you carve out enough of your time every single week to actually do those big changes, and not get overwhelmed by the firefighting that's inevitably part of the job. The advice I would give to chancellors is that you have an incredible influence on not just the economy, but the social contract and the values that we have as a society. I mean, I think one of the greatest post-war chancellors was Nigel Lawson. And, his big tax cuts of 1988 actually caused a recession. Yet he's still thought of as a great chancellor, because the taxes that he cut turned us into a country that valued hard work and entrepreneurialism, and made us one of the fastest growing economies for several decades afterwards. And so don't underestimate the long-term changes that you can unlock as a chancellor. But to do that, you've got to form a very clear idea in your mind of what those long-term changes are, and make sure you carve out enough time to deliver them through your budgets and fiscal events. And as Chancellor in particular, you have a privilege that no other cabinet minister has, which is that you do budgets. And budgets are moments where you can force through decisions in Whitehall on any range of things, you know, on the way we teach English in schools, or, you know, a rail link between two northern towns, or, you know, welfare reform, or you have that ability in a budget to concentrate minds and get a decision made quickly. And no one else has that. I mean, you know, if I was health secretary, I'd have died to have a moment equivalent to a budget every year where I was standing in Parliament, because it becomes a moment when everyone has to help you out to make it a good moment for the government. So it's really worth thinking how you're going to use those moments.